All right, Canadians. How many people, when we started singing about victory, you wanted to cry out in that moment, but you thought people would think you were weird? Huh? I was there. I was going to call out, but I thought, I don't know what word I'm going to use. I'm just so excited in this moment, right? It's okay. We can do that. These things are acceptable here. As we continue on our journey, getting a sense of what we have ahead of us. Give me one quick second. There we go. I do not want to install an update right now. Have you been thinking about heaven? Have you been talking about it with your family members? Have you been having good conversations around, dreaming about what it's going to be like, what are the things we're going to do? Have you been thinking about the reward aspect of it? Especially for those of you who are in life groups, are you spending more time thinking about the time that you spend now and how it's going to translate into what we're going to experience later? This is one of those kind of studies on heaven that I think we can't let just be a part of our year in the way of just going, okay, yep, what did we do this year? Well, we studied, spiritual warfare. We talked about the book of Ephesians and went through it, and then we did the Beatitudes, and then we swung around the corner and we did heaven, and all of these moving pieces, if you see the way they've been fit, are by the power of the Spirit to guide us through a certain focus, to get into this place where we understand how it is that we're supposed to work in this world, how there is spiritual warfare around us all the time, and how are we to be equipped to do that. The Ephesians study is about how we, the church, collectively do that together. The Beatitudes giving us a sense of the power of Christ and how we're supposed to have the attitudes that He has for us, moving us into this day of looking forward to what we have ahead of us. Now, I don't know about you, but there's been many days over this last year, I'm going to say last few years, where life has been challenging on different fronts. It's been hard to watch the news and to see what's going on in the world and to see the way people are treating each other. It's been hard to be able to see what's going on in the economy and to hear young people talk about how bleak they feel their future is going to be because of this, that, or the next thing. And I believe the reason why God is pulling us into this time of looking at heaven is to give us that bold feeling that this is not my home or my forever home in the circumstances of which we find ourselves in. But He's taking us through this because He wants us to look forward to another day. This is an interesting quote that I wanted to share with you by Jim Elliot. He says, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." I've read that quote over about 12 times this week. Because it's one of those kind of things where it's that reminder that what we have around us, what we're experiencing right now, this stuff's just dust. It doesn't have lasting tangibility. And so we're called to think about eternal things, to work towards eternal things, to be focused on what Christ has for us now. And the most important thing that we can do is to build relationships with each other. Because the only thing that's going to last beyond this world are human souls, human lives. And so we need to be thinking about those we love and care about, or those that we're connected with in our network of people. And say, when I think about heaven, I can't think about it just for myself, but I have to think about all the individuals that I want to see there. And I need to work towards helping them in any way that I can to understand the beauty and wonder of what we have ahead of us and not to get too firmly rooted in this world, which is passing. So what we're going to take a look at this week is, what is heaven going to look like then? Last week we talked about what is it like right now. And so in the future, you might go, well, really, is heaven going to change? Well, there are some things that are going to change about the heaven as it stands right now and what it's going to be in eternity. And as we take a look at it, we want to look at it from a few different passages. We're going to spend the bulk of our time in Revelation, but we do need to start in 2 Peter. And so I'm going to ask you to turn there with me if you would. This is an important passage that is refuted on different fronts for different reasons. But as we take a look at what we have ahead of us, we have to recognize that what we have ahead is important for us to live our lives now with that forward thinking. When we look at verse 10 here, it says, "But the day of the Lord will come like a thief." You don't expect a thief to show up, right? You can barricade your home, you can do whatever you want, but you never truly know when they're going to come. And they're going to try and come when you least expect it. The day of the Lord is going to come that way. Regular life is just going to be happening. It's going to be going on. And all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, all of a sudden, people are going to be gone. I don't want to know what it's going to be like in this world for those who are left behind. But I think it's going to be chaotic. But for those of us who have that assurance that we're going to meet with Christ and we're going to be taken out of this world for a time, and you've seen that, this is the day of the Lord that comes like a thief. On that day, the heavens will pass away with a loud noise. The elements will burn and be dissolved, and the earth and its works will be disclosed. Since all these things are to be dissolved in this way, it is clear what sort of people you should be in holy conduct and godliness, as you wait for the day of God and hasten its coming. Because on that day the heavens will be dissolved with fire and the elements will melt with heat. But based on his promise, we wait for new heavens and a new earth where righteousness dwells. Now, on that timeline that we've looked at before, we've talked about the rapture of when the church, those who are alive now and those who are past, are going to be taken out. There are two major schools of thought in regards to this. This is considered a pre-tribulational, premillennial thought. Don't get bogged down by words. But this is what it could look like. What we're looking at right now is the final judgment here. You see the earth and it's burning up. Now, I don't know about you, but there are some people who really enjoy recycling, and there's others who do not. So every home has somebody who's the recycle person, right? Who's picking out of the garbage somebody put in there that didn't belong there. And the other person's, well, it's just one. So I'm not going to have a show of hands, but it's one of those kind of things where that also feeds into what you believe it or not. In the sense that I've heard theologians talk back and forth about, you know what, the world is ours to use and consume. That everything in it is meant for us to enjoy and to be able to accomplish things and push forward advancements and things like that. And so if garbage amounts and pollution happens, well, that's just going to happen. So then it's okay. Because in the end, it's all going to burn up anyway. So maybe it'll just accelerate things and get it there faster. But then when we think about how God created the world in such a beautiful state, and the words that he gave to Adam and Eve, that they were to curate and take care of the world, I think there's a balance between the two. And in that, I believe that it's our responsibility to do all that we can in our sphere of influence and ability to do the best we can to care for this planet that God has given to us. But according to this passage, there is going to be time when what we know, what we experience here, is going to be no more. There's going to be a dissolving of it. There's going to be fire. There's going to be a consuming, a melting of the elements of the world and the heavens, and things are going to change. How are they going to change? That's what we're looking at today. But Jesus himself said in Mark chapter 13, verse 31, he says, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away." And when we think about the things that he has said, the things that are recorded in his word, he's saying that what I have prophesied about, what things are recorded in this word, these things are going to come to fruition. What you know and what you're experiencing right now, yep, this won't be exactly like this. But it's going to be rebuilt, renewed, redone. There's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. John S. Feinberg said this about this passage. He says it speaks of a gigantic meltdown of all the existing structures. Matter from this will be reformed into a new heaven and a new earth. So it's not the kind of thing where everything's just going to be burned up and it's just going to be ash and it's just going to be gone. Nope, there's going to be a recreating, a reforming, a remaking, a rejuvenating, a rebuilding of what is back to its original state. And I don't know if you spent any time on this, but if you think about a new heaven and a new earth, and on this new earth, all of the people who were Christians in all the centuries past, all the people who believed in God, placed their faith and trust in Christ, and those who are here and those who are yet to come, do you think this planet is big enough to hold them? Have you had that thought? Part of the reason why it's got to change and terraform and be different because there's going to be so many more. Right? I believe there's going to be more than 8 billion. We're having a tough time with 8 billion people on this planet. It's going to likely be bigger than what it is. It's going to be so much better, and it's going to be recreated back to its original state of what Adam and Eve experienced themselves. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes when you go outside, you go, oh, boy. Or you travel behind that diesel truck, right? And it's getting in your car, and you're like, oh, my goodness, jeepers, creepers, that guy's just blowing all kinds of stuff in the car. That won't be there anymore. It'll be fresh air. Air so moisture-rich, we've never been able to experience that before. Everything will be pure and wonderful. The fruit, can you imagine? You know when you bite into a strawberry, you get a bunch of them, you bite one, you're like, oh, that's really good. You're afraid to grab another one, right? Because that one's like, oh, that one's tart. Now I got to go look for another sweet one, you know. And then when the sweet one happens again, you're like, that was really good. I want another one, but I can't trust the rest of that thing that it's going to be. But when we get to heaven, everything's going to be so amazing in its original state that everything's going to taste better, look better, smell better. It's going to be fantastic. And so we're going to focus our attention this week and next on what is heaven going to be like then, and what is it going to be like in the regards to a new heaven and a new earth. What can we have to look forward to? We're going to focus our attention on Revelation chapter 21 and 22, 21 this week, 22 next. And so if you want to read ahead, you want to be prepared for what we have next week, then those are the two chapters you want to be focusing on. If you wanted to add 20 to it, you can, because it's very good as well. But this is going to give us a headway into what do we have ahead of us as far as a new heaven and a new earth. And so if you want to turn to Revelation chapter 21 with me, we're going to go through it in different bite-sized chunks and discuss it. But in Revelation 21, in my Bible, it says the new creation. Yours may say something different, but it starts off with, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. Look at that Mark passage 13:31. What did Jesus say? They're going to pass away. But you see what you're experiencing right now. It's going to be different. And then here we are, the Apostle John, seeing it for what it is. In verse 2 he says, I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. Then I heard a loud voice from the throne. Look, God's dwelling is with humanity, and he will live with them. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them and will be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Grief, crying, and pain will be no more, because the previous things have passed away. Then the one seated on the throne said, Look, I am making everything new. He also said, Write, because these words are faithful and true. Then he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will freely give to the thirsty from the spring of the water of life. The one who conquers will inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. Last week we took a look at where God's dwelling place is. At the present time, God considers his dwelling place in heaven. Jesus himself refers to the Father being in heaven in his prayer as he was teaching the disciples how to pray. And then we looked at this passage in Psalm 11:4, where it says, the Lord's throne is in heaven. But after we said that, I said, do you know how with the president, this is his plane and it's Air Force One? But if something happens to Air Force One and he's on another plane, even if it's a little biplane, two-propeller plane, that plane then becomes Air Force One. So wherever the president is, that's what gets its name. In Revelation 21, 2 and 3, it says this. I also saw the holy city from Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. Then I heard a loud voice from what? The throne. Not a throne, not one of the thrones, but from the throne of the universe, the throne that God himself holds for himself and himself only. And as Jerusalem comes down, and as it lays down on the new earth, you see what happens as his throne comes. It says God's dwelling place is with humanity. And so heaven was God's dwelling. But in the new heaven and the new earth, God takes up residency here with us, and he rules from earth itself as the new Jerusalem comes down from out of heaven, and he plants himself here. And so when you think of that, you go, then we can't necessarily begrudge what we have as a planet. As a matter of fact, God has big plans for this planet, that it means a lot to him, that in his created order, as he put all of these things together, he created this wonderful environment for his creation. And that in his ultimate plan, he plans to meld together heaven and earth and wants to descend out of heaven himself and be amongst his people. How awesome will that be, that the throne of God is going to be here? In verse 4, it says this. It says, he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will no longer exist. Grief, crying, pain will exist no longer because the previous things have passed away. How many people are longing for that day? If I don't see every hand, I'm going to think you're odd, all right? Anybody tired of crying? Anybody tired of grieving? It's hard, isn't it? It's exhausting, it's taxing, and it's painful. And even if we don't directly, aren't in the middle of the things that are going on in the Middle East or other parts of the world, we still feel that pain of these people that are having to go through this. We even go through the pain of thoughts around, could this happen here? We've been sheltered for so long. What if this was us? What if this is our children on the run? There's a lot in this world that scares us. There's a lot of fear that goes on. But I really look forward to what we have in heaven, and I love the fact that he says, I'm going to make all things new. And a part of my making things new is that you no longer, and not for a moment, and not for a couple of years, this gap, for all of eternity, you will no longer have to endure, experience, put up with any of these things anymore. And to that, if you don't yell, hallelujah, that's just going to be so wonderful for heaven. And when you're having a conversation with somebody about it, this is a really easy segue into that conversation. You can just ask, do you enjoy crying? Do you like grieving for people? Do you like pain? I don't either. But you know what I'm really looking forward to is a day when we don't have any of that. Well, what do you mean? Well, I was reading the Bible the other day. Found this really interesting verse in Revelation. Can I read it to you? I'm excited about this. And as we talk with people about these things in that way, I'm going to tell you, you're going to have a captivated audience. Because nobody wants to experience these things, and everybody wants a new day without it. And everybody's longing for something better. And even when you talk to people at funerals who aren't believers, they will say, well, they're in a better place now. Why do they say that? Because it consoles them. They feel better about that. They feel better that there's thoughts that they may not be experiencing this anymore. Why? Because for themselves, when they die, they're hoping that for themselves too. But what they need is the truth. And what they need is Jesus. And they need to understand that Jesus is the only one that can get them there. In Revelation 21:7, it says this, the victor will inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. Who is the victor? You are. You are. I am. The individual who places their faith and trust in Jesus Christ. The individual who lives it out to the end. The individual who sticks it out through thick and thin, that knows what they have ahead of them. The victor are those who are going to inherit everything. When you take a look at my son, the word son, is it capitalized or is it lowercase? Lowercase. He's not talking about Jesus. He's talking about you. And he's talking about me. And he's saying that we ourselves will be the victors from this life. And we will be able to inherit all that it is that he has for us. There's a large inheritance ahead. We need to work towards it. Revelation 21, look at verses 9 to 14. It says this in regards to the New Jerusalem. It says, then one of the seven angels who had held the seven bowls filled with seven last plagues came and spoke to me. Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. He then carried me away in the Spirit to a great high mountain. Sorry, I'm going to take a drink. There we go. To a great high mountain and showing me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. Arrayed with God's glory, her radiance was like a precious jewel, like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. The city had a massive high wall with 12 gates. 12 angels were at the gates. The names of the 12 tribes of Israel's sons were inscribed on the gates. There were 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, and 3 gates on the west. The city wall had 12 foundations, and the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb were on the foundations. Now, I don't know if you can wrap your mind around this. I've looked hard to find a picture of somebody possibly painting or trying to convey what this might look like from what we see there. This one I thought was the most beautiful of all the pictures, but I think that it's lacking in some areas as far as what is depicted in that passage. But to think of the glory and how beautiful it's going to be, we can't even begin to wrap our minds around it. It talks about the 12 foundations and of all of these precious jewels that are going to be there as the 12 foundations. And on the 12 foundations, it says there that there's going to be the name of each one of the apostles. Now, I'm not going to ask if anybody can recite the 12 names of the apostles. But with those names, here's 11 of them. Who's not on the list? Judas. Judas is not there. Why? I put Jude. It should be Judas. I am sorry. Change the E to an AS and we're okay. All right. Judas. Because he sold out Christ. He wasn't supposed to continue on beyond that. And because of that, he was no longer considered an apostle. So then what they did was they then cast lots for others who were going to fill Judas's role. Matthias was the individual that came up, and he served in that capacity afterwards. What about Paul? Because Paul himself calls himself an apostle. Because of the experience that he had on the Damascus Road. He says, I had a face-to-face encounter with Jesus. Interesting, isn't it? I'm not going to give you the answers. You know why? Because I don't have it. This is one of those kind of things as you're reading through Scripture going, this is interesting. This is one of those things I'm hoping that I remember, that when I get there, I'm going to look at that foundation and I'm going to look at those names. I'm going to go, was it Matthias or was it Paul? Who was it? And is it going to matter if it's either or? Because both served well. But it's one of those kind of things where you go, the 12 foundations are beautiful and brilliant, and on them are going to be the names of each one of those different individuals who served so valiantly and so well and laid all of their lives down for each and every one of us so that the gospel would continue. You move on into this chapter, into verse 15, going to 21, and it says, "The one who spoke to me had a golden measuring rod to measure the city, its gates, and its walls. The city is laid out in a square. Its length and width are the same. He measured the city with the rod at 12,000 stadia. Its length, width, and height are equal. Then measured its wall, 144 cubits according to human measurement, which the angel used. The building material of its wall was jasper, and the city was pure gold, clear as glass. The foundations of the city wall were adorned with every kind of jewel. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third chalcedony, the fourth emerald, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, and the 12th was amethyst. The 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each individual gate was made of a single pearl. The main street of the city was pure gold, transparent as glass." Those word pictures that are placed there, I think it would have been really hard for John to have described what it was that he saw here. Has anyone been able to look through gold? Right? But it's clear, but it's gold. But I can see through it, but it's gold. It's going to be really interesting. Now, one of the things I love about this passage is the measurements. Now, there's an ongoing joke in my own family that anybody says hang something, out comes the measuring tape, out comes the level, out comes the hammer, out comes the right size of screw or nail for whatever it is. And I'll walk around, I got to make sure and I measure the end of the wall to this portion of the wall, and I want to be right dead center. If there's two, well, that's challenging, but I can do it. But I don't like those frames that have two hooks on both sides. Who likes those? Nobody. Why do they do that? I don't know. But when I read a passage like this, I know something about God. That measurements are important, that he loves to have everything just right. And when you look at this city, you think the length is as equal to the width as it is high. And whether it's going to be a cube, I don't know. Maybe the highest part in it's going to be a building that's going to be as high as it is wide. I don't know. But I'm really, really looking forward to seeing it. I'm really looking forward to looking through the walls into the city, or walking on something that has all of these beautiful foundations and the light that's just going to burst right out of it, and be able to look through what I'm walking on at all those different things. It's going to be mind-blowing. It's going to be phenomenal. And we won't have to look out on the street and go, those crazy potholes, those gold potholes, because they won't be there. Because all of these things that frustrate us in this world aren't going to be a part of what our next experience is going to be. This is the best picture I could find out there of these different layers of what that foundation might look like with each one of those different precious stones. Incredible. And it's one of those kind of things where you're thinking John is only able to just depict what he thinks he sees based on what he knows in this world. It's likely going to be so much more that we can't even wrap our mind around it. In the latter part of this passage, looking at verses 22 to the 26, it says this: "I did not see a temple in it, because the Lord God, the Almighty, and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, because the glory of God illuminates it, and its lamp is the Lamb. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. Its gates will never close by day because it will never be night there. They will bring the glory and honor of the nations into it. And you go, wait a second. Nations? There's going to be nations still? I thought we'd just be like one great big happy family, one great big huge one government under God. But there's going to be nations, and there's going to be kings, there's going to be rulers of those nations, and they're going to come to the holy city. Doesn't say much more than that, but at least it gives us a little bit of a glimpse of what it is that we're looking at. Now, last week we were talking about the temple in heaven. Is there a temple in heaven where God's throne resides? And to understand this, we kind of have to look at Revelation chapter 3, verse 12. And this is what it says. The one who conquers, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never shall he go out of it. Wait a second. I thought a passage later on said there's no temple. Now you're saying there's a temple in heaven. What is happening with this passage? Well, let's understand who it is that he's talking to. One, he's talking to the one who conquers. The one who conquers are you and me, the individuals who are the saints of God. And so he's saying we ourselves will become pillars in the temple of God. Now, if you're going to be a literalist on this, what are you thinking? I got an itchy nose. But that's not at all what he's talking about here. When you look at this passage, there's no temple in the city for its temple. God itself is the temple. And the light is going to illuminate the whole of the world from it. Flat earth, round earth, I don't know. But only God can illuminate all by himself. John MacArthur says this about it. He says, the point is not that we become immovable support posts in a building, but that we enter the very presence of the Lord and never again leave him. Those are the posts. We get to be there forever. He goes on and he says, he, the Lord, is the temple of which we are the pillars. The imagery is tremendous, rich, echoing Jesus' promise, I will come again and will take you to myself, and where I am, you will be also. That's John 14:3. And then again, Paul in Thessalonians 4:17 says, so we will always be with the Lord. If there's any encouragement to be had, it's that. You ever have those moments where you're just crying out to God and you go, God, I just need you so bad. Right now I need you. I need you to hear me. I just need to unbear. I just need to talk to you. I just need you. And beyond needing you, I need to feel you. I need your presence here with me. I feel so alone. Would you just make yourself known? And what he's saying is that in our future, what we have ahead of us is that we don't ever have to have that feeling. We never will have that feeling because that's pain. But we're going to be in his presence always. Now in verses 8 and 27, 8 we looked at where there's no more tears and all of those things. Sorry, no it doesn't. I apologize. 8 is this. Where was it? Oh, yes, I skipped over this one. In 8 it says, but the cowards, faithless, detestable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their share will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. You go down to verse 27 and it says this, nothing unclean will ever enter it, nor anyone who does what is detestable or false, but only those written in the Lamb's book of life. Why is that important? Because nothing that we hate in this world is going to be there. Nothing that we fear in this world is going to be there. Wouldn't it be nice just to go to work and not to second guess the motives of workmates around you? where they're smiling at you face to face as they reach around the back with a knife and go, these are the things we're not going to have to contend with anymore. Factions and families and things like that. All of these things are going to be gone. We're not going to have that. And then you also think of the evil that is in the world. We think of the people who just are evil, do evil things, dream up new evil things and do them. Painful things to other people, victimizing others. They won't be there either. And there will be no fear of anyone ever showing up that way. Because it's not going to be that way. And so when I think of all the crazy things that we contend with in this world, he wants to assure us in this passage, don't worry about it. Don't take what you think in this world into the next, because it's not going to be there. You can rest in me. You will be with me, and it's going to be fantastic. Our place will forever be in the presence of God. Are you looking forward to that? So am I. I really am. And so with that,